All right. So last night as I was leaving, I wasn't really prepared for this lesson today, and I thought maybe we should just be dancing. Just want to keep reliving that. It was wonderful, and look forward to more celebration with you all. So as many of you know, we have a bookmark, and our bookmark, we are on our 5th book. And I'm not done reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. We start a new book in November, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper specifically on Atlas of the Heart. And I know how many of you in the room are a part of John and Julie's Atlas of the Heart? Great. I'm going to ask some questions, so be prepared. I'd like to hear what some of you have to say. And I'm going to start with the question is, so Atlas of the Heart, you know, normally when we think of an atlas, we think of a book of maps or charts. And of course, what she is doing is giving us an atlas of the heart, the feeling heart. So how is Atlas of the Heart a book about understanding and labeling our emotions correctly important for our spiritual growth and journey? Yeah.
By being more in touch with our authentic self and all that it encompasses.
By being more in touch with our authentic self. And what was the end?
All that it encompasses.
And all that it encompasses. So meaningful connection, first to self, the authentic self. Not who our parents have told us we were, or our teachers told us we were, or anybody else, including society, about who we are, what we should wear, what we should be, what gender we should declare, yada, yada, yada. Your authentic self. And this is a never-ending journey because are you exactly the same as you were when you were younger? Why not? Growth, maturity, evolution, experience, rebellion, okay. Yes.
Mentors.
Yes, mentors. I mean, even some of the stuff, maybe what was your favorite food when you were younger is not your favorite food today. Why? Because change. So change is the only constant, right? And as we heard in the song Landslide about change, what else? Why would we be using Atlas of the Heart for spiritual growth and development?
Over here.
Yes.
Emotions represent a sensation in your body in relation to what your experience is.
Yes.
And with emotions, you are given feedback about you in your life and where you're at, what's happening, and choices.
Yes. Emotions are giving you feedback. Feedback, if you're willing to look at them, about perhaps your values, what you're seeing, what you would like to experience, what you expect. And all of those emotions are giving you messages for you to process. Yes, John?
In her research, she found that most people can identify 3 emotions. And in her book, she covers 87. So the power of that is to come to a greater understanding of the emotions so that you can identify areas that you may want to work on.
Beautiful.
In the class, we're doing affirmations, we're doing journaling, and we'll be doing some treatment, etc., to kind of coincide with it all.
Yes. And I know some of you have heard me tell the story. We didn't talk about feelings in my family. So yes, when I was a young adult, it was happy, sad, and mad. But life has a lot more depth than that, yes? And if you're unaware, you might feel that depth, but if you can't communicate that depth, it sort of stays trapped inside you. And so this is a map to your emotions. I know for a fact when I read there were 87 emotions in the book, it's like I wouldn't have been able to come up with 87 emotions. I still have some wonderful spiritual growth to learn from this book. Yeah.
The other thing is it's Atlas, and a lot of those emotions are connected to one another and lead to one another.
Yes.
And so it's interesting to see how, when you feel that you are disappointed, well, what is that really about? And being able to come back to, well, that's connected to expectations or what have you.
Yes. And so it's very much a net and a clarification. And the more clear that you can get, the more you can, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm experiencing. And then when you can communicate that, then you can connect more meaningfully with others. Yes. On page 272, you see all my purple marks. I loved how she said, here. Our connections with others can only be as deep as our connection with ourselves. If I don't know and understand who I am and what I need, want, and believe, I can't share myself with you. I need to be connected to myself in my own body and learning what makes me work. This is how I start to develop the grounded confidence I need to move through the world and to cultivate meaningful connection with others. And she says, before this work, I didn't give enough importance to spending time and energy connecting with myself. I made that optional if I had anything left after connecting with others. It wasn't working, and now I know why. Beautiful. Yes, good. If you haven't bought the book, I don't know if we have any more left, but we'll get some more. So if we don't know our heart, it's more difficult to connect to ourselves and others to make a meaningful life. Now, what is Brene Brown best known for? Shame, vulnerability, right? So I'm going to be pretty vulnerable in sharing, and some of you know my history, so it may not be as much revealing, but for others who don't know me. So I have an adopted son. His name is David. He is technically my nephew. His mom was murdered by his dad when he was 1 year old. Sue and I were pregnant. Sue was pregnant with our daughter, Corinne. And so at the time that it happened, we felt like we don't even know what it's like to have one child, and therefore passed on the opportunity to take David in. And he was given to another side of the family. David's mom was Sue's half-sister. So the other side of the family took David in, and then that family, he was a nurse, and he got arrested for stealing drugs and shooting himself up at night. So we finally, with Sue's dad's assistance, being the paternal grandfather, filed to have legal custody of David. My mind just races to so many things. This was in Visalia, California. Does anybody know Visalia? Very conservative area. And so the legal battle was the lesbians versus the drug addicts. Who are the best for this child? Now, for those of you who aren't maybe 60 and older, this is before gay marriage being acceptable. This is a time of, Sue and I being raised in that you don't necessarily show affection in public. And of course, there's still much prejudice today. But you can imagine what that felt like to be in a legal situation where they're trying to decide whether the love between two women is better than a family who has a father who's addicted to drugs. By the time we finally got David, he was 3 years old, and we had already been consulting a child psychologist, basically saying, he lives hundreds of miles away from us. We would go down to Visalia, which for a 9-month-old in a car seat, 6 hours down, was not easy. Thank God my parents were in the middle of that geographically. And many of the things that we were counseled on, and those of you that are therapists in the room or social workers know, is a concern about attachment. How attached are you to your mother when you're 1 year old? Yeah, like you're depending on her. So you lose your mom, you lose your dad to jail, then you're given to another family who has dysfunction. So now going to a third family by the time you're 3 years old. Two of the things that we learned is, first of all, let me say, we did a lot of counseling, couples, family, and for David. And your physical age is not the same as your mental age, which is not the same as your emotional age. And that is especially true for those who have experienced trauma. My son was very smart beyond his emotional capacity. And the focus of all of that counseling was very much about emotional connection. And the way the child psychologist mentioned it was called building your emotional muscle. And I loved that. I loved that metaphor. Because of course we know whether it's, working out or running, you don't run a marathon in a day, you don't get buffed in muscles by, lifting weights for one day. Building your muscle requires an exercise, a working of. And so in order to work the emotional muscles, the adoption of David was fantastic for me. Again, I said my family did not talk a lot about feelings. And I think about that when I read this book. Now, think about this. David, being 1 year old, was pre-verbal. How do you share with your family what you're feeling? And even while he was still in the single-digit age, he had a feeling in his gut that was the feeling that was there since he was 1 year old. He knew no different. So, reading Atlas of the Heart, I ponder that time where, the challenge was that certainly by the time we got him, he was 3 years old, so he was doing a little talking, and thank God he had Corinne as his little sister to really bond and connect with and be at the same age. But if you can't connect with yourself about how you're feeling, how are you going to connect with others? So the personal experience that I've had with David speaks very loudly to why it is so important for us to know ourselves. And then, of course, to go even deeper spiritually, to know our truth. So really, 87 emotions, I was thinking about the fact that, well, even if I took one emotion a week, that would be 18 months of studying the Atlas of the Heart. Wow. And I know that in the class you are studying some in pairs and triplets, etc., again, because they're close to one another. So I'm going to talk about a couple examples, again, continuing to invite the rest of you, if you haven't gotten the book or joined in the discussion, I hope that I'm inviting you to more of that. I know that many of you know post-COVID, there was a lot of loneliness and depression because we were all isolated. And, you still read today about how people are craving meaningful connection. And that's what this community is about, meaningful, purposeful, life purpose connection. And Brené Brown, of course, is inviting us to get to know our emotions, especially the uncomfortable ones. Because what do we do today? In COVID, social media blew open. And when it blew open, we had Schadenfreude. You like the German accent? The Schadenfreude. The Schadenfreude. What is the Schadenfreude? Okay, according to Brené Brown, it simply means pleasure or joy derived from someone else's suffering or misfortune. You see a lot of that on social media today. I'm going to talk about that. And what we're really after, especially as religious scientists and knowing our truths, is Freudenfreude. And Freudenfreude is the opposite of course, Schadenfreude. It's the enjoyment of another's success. It's also a subset of empathy. All right, so, particularly the political environment, you see in a lot of social media, it's like, yes, we all may have certain opinions about certain people or certain policies or certain things that are going on. But that doesn't call us to Schadenfreude. Oh, I want to see you in jail. Oh, we should, with this grrr anger. And of course, those of us who know the principles of science of mind know that what you're doing is throwing out a boomerang. What you wish for someone else is going to come back at you. We know that we're one. Yes, I can stand here with a quarter and you can describe one side of the quarter as heads and the other side of the quarter as tails. It's still one quarter. We are still humanity. We are still connected to one another. It does not serve the world, Schadenfreude. I'll be happy when you... ... And really, in the science of mind, as we study oneness, we say those words, but as you study and go deeper and deeper and deeper with oneness, and I'll talk about my experience in the ocean, being one with the fish and the coral and the water, you understand at a deeper level we have learned when we were younger how that humans are separate from the rest of the world because we have intelligence. What are we doing with that intelligence? The other book I'm going to talk about, see a smile on your face, Finding the Mother Tree. The idea here is that we understand we want the Freudenfreude. We want to be focused on, we want your joy because your joy is our joy. So I'm going to switch now to awe and wonder. Brené Brown also has definitions of awe and wonder. I love how researchers Vager and Wageman explain it. Wonder inspires the wish to understand. Awe inspires the wish to let shine, to acknowledge, and to unite. When feeling awe, we tend to simply stand back and observe to provide a stage for the phenomenon to shine. It's wonderful. Depth. So I read a lot of books. I have a lot of books that I've bought and not read, books I've been given and not read, and my bookshelves typically have double rows, and maybe even books on top of the double rows. And so I was talking with Connie and Monty one day, and Reverend Connie was talking about finding the mother tree. And the more she talked about it, the more it's like, okay, I have to have that book. I have plenty of books, but I'm going to order that book. And then, of course, I took it with me to Hawaii. The timing, the synergy when you are in alignment is just continues to also be in awe of the synergy that happens. So I'm reading this book, and this book is about a woman who's basically a scientist. She doesn't know that in the beginning. And as a kid, she talks about how their dog got stuck in a sewage pit and her uncle and father had to dig out the dog. And while, of course, being a child, the adults are digging out the ground, she's intrigued and in wonder about how it's sort of like thinking about taking a section of the forest ground and seeing the roots of the trees and the roots of other trees and the fungi and all the aspects of soil. And then just being in awe of that network, and then looking up, and they lived in a forest, and just being in awe of all of that, which led her to continue to wonder. And if you read the book, she talks a lot about her constantly asking herself questions. I wonder if. And she continues, this is, of course, her career, so I'm not going to give away the whole book. But she basically works for the Forest Service, sometimes questioning, why am I working for those that are essentially clear cutting? It's not healthy. Yes, I know we need lumber. I have no problem. She says, I have no problem with that. I came from a family who lived in the lumber, who had their livelihood in the forest industry. But she continued to do her research to a point that she became a rebel. She was being her authentic self and discovering that through the science that she did, that the birch trees and the fir trees needed each other, and they actually, via roots, shared nutrients at different times in the seasons. And at one point, the birch tree would give more to the fir tree than the fir tree gave back to the birch tree. But when the birch tree dropped all its leaves to provide to the soil the things that the trees needed, then it went the other way around. It was not competition, it was collaboration. So, of course, as a scientist, she did the experiments, wrote up the journals, peer review, making sure that what she had done scientifically stood with other scientists, but the forestry department wasn't going to have it. They knew that if you planted different trees in the clear cutting, that they would be competing for resources. No. She wrote the article. She took a lot of guff. She talks about, the pain that caused. Eventually, she became a PhD at University of British Columbia and has done a lot of research that has advanced the understanding of forests and diversity. Oh, imagine that. She was authentic, discovered more and more of her authentic self. Of course, as you study more science of mind, particularly if you're a practitioner or a minister, you start seeing everything through the eyes of the philosophy. And when you start reading this book, realizing the intelligence of nature and the alignment and the oneness and the understanding of, if we can understand how the forest works, we too, as human beings, can be collaborating instead of competing. Now, this leads to, if you'll go to the different background. So, of course, being in the ocean and being lots of salt water, many of you know how that feels to just float. And so, of course, I did snorkeling in my favorite places in Kauai. And the place that I happened to be snorkeling, there are lots of waves. But as you know, you're floating, you got your snorkel stuff on as the waves come. Whee! It's an e-ticket ride. You guys remember e-ticket rides in Disneyland, right? And so, it's very fun to be out there, definitely feel the oneness. And I'm looking at all the fish, and I capture some fish like this who are in a school. A little bit smaller than these, but you know their family, they're a school, and they're eating away at the coral. And then, of course, what happens? The waves come, and they get blown from where they're eating at this part of the coral to someplace entirely different. Change. Do they panic? Do they try to find their way back to that particular reef? Do they cause havoc? No. I got moved to this reef. Okay, I'll just start eating here. Oh, here comes the wave again. Oh, okay, I'll just start eating here. And I thought, Isn't that interesting metaphorically? Change takes them to, a different space and time. Yeah, doesn't bother him. Just going to go with the flow. Just going to go with life. Lots of wonderful metaphors when reading the book about the connection that's happening amongst the trees and then thinking about the ocean. Now, we did have one day that it was really nasty and rainy, and I thought to myself, the fish don't care. They're still in their oneness. So there's, I've always been a nature girl, and it's just been wonderful. Again, the timing couldn't have been better to be reading this book and to be experiencing being one with the ocean and recognizing, again, the intelligence if we will just open. Now, this leads back to awe and wonder. Typically, we are so busy on our mind, we don't allow the awe of life to just savor the moment. And I told a few of you last night that when I was in Hawaii, I just kept saying, how can I savor this? And the best way to savor it was just to be in the present moment, make sure I wasn't in my head, but just taking in the beauty of nature and the beauty of being in the tropical paradise with the birds and the flowers. And I have lots of flower pictures because I just can't get over the beautiful tropical flowers. And so what I'm doing is inviting you into the awe of the one life that we are all living and the life that you are living. The fact that your soul, the spiritual aspect of you, is having a human experience in this world, in this place, with so many miracles happening every day. And the news is not going to be telling you how wonderful it is. It's up to you to choose what you want to focus on. Schaden, Freude, Freuden, Freuden, Freude. It's your choice. And I hope that as we move forward in community with 40 more years of continued spiritual growth and development together, that we continue to bring to our life here. And next Saturday night, we are hosting a table at Chat, another place where we can connect with others who are doing good in the world and take action in the world to basically be a witness to and be a demonstrator of what we know is the good. Thank you all. All right.